This is your Wednesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope everyone's having a good one out there today. Sun was shining on Tuesday. Got outside, went for a run. Do that a lot in the winter anyway, but motivated extra yesterday by the nice, relatively speaking, weather for us. So hope you guys are getting outside as much as possible. I know that helps me in the wintertime, kind of break up the monotony of the cold days, get me out of my cold basement and into the sunshine and get a little bit of that good stuff. So hope everyone's doing well. Got a lot to get to today. Gonna get Rachel Blount covers the Olympics for the Star Tribune. She's going to check in a little while with a voicemail, as we call them, from Beijing. Lots of good reporting from Rachel out there, and she'll kind of set the scene for you, bring you as close to the games as you can possibly get. I'll have Marcus Fuller on in a little bit as well to talk Gophers men's basketball. Marcus, of course, covers that team for the Star Tribune, does a great job of doing it. It's been a difficult stretch for the Gophers after that better-than-expected start to the season, but the schedule eases up here now for a little while. They play Nebraska Wednesday night. Nebraska does not have a Big Ten win yet this season. They've got some games against Northwestern, Penn State. So, opportunities in the second half of the season to play some teams that are maybe closer to them in the standings and in talent level. So maybe Ben Johnson's team can get back and get some more of that winning confidence on the court as well. So we will see about that. Going to get to the Wild here in a little bit too. They came back from their break, albeit to lose 2-0 to Winnipeg on Tuesday night. But first, what did I miss? Let's talk some Timberwolves and NBA. Wolves went to Sacramento on Tuesday night. Came back, or didn't came back. They're still there, but they delivered a 134-114 win over the Kings. Just another in a string of similar kind of performances for them lately in a good way. They've won 5 in a row now, 29-25, and it was largely the bench again that was doing it. I mean, Karl-Anthony Towns still rolling plenty good. And he's going to be in that 3-point shooting contest at the All-Star game in addition to being an All-Star reserve. Cat was good on Tuesday night. They're getting a lot from a lot of different people, I guess, in that win. But 29-25 now puts them kind of in an interesting position, which I'll get to in a minute. I'll talk about the game just a little bit more here because like I said, Cat had 25 points, 2 of 3 from 3-point range. They were red hot from 3-point range as a team. 22 of 44. They made 50% of their threes, and it's been the offense that's been carrying them a lot lately. But definitely in playoff position, and they've been doing it a lot lately without Anthony Edwards. I want to get to a Chris Finch quote about Anthony Edwards before we get too much into all of the good things from this game, because he's kind of strung together a bunch of kind of meh or clunker games lately, even as the Wolves have been playing well. I mean, just looking at his last 5 games, all Wolves wins. He played fine against Detroit, but aside from that, the shooting hasn't been there, hasn't been making a lot of threes. The effort plays haven't necessarily been there. He's not getting quite as many steals, not helping himself in other ways. So winning without much from Edwards is a good sign for the team, but not a great sign, for long term. I'm sure he's just kind of going through a little funk. But head coach Chris Finch addressed that after Tuesday night's game.
Well, he'll get back on track, I'm sure. It's it's my next priority is get him going. But you gotta be a participant in your own recovery, and he's not playing with a lot of energy right now. He's not making many multiple effort plays, not doing little things to get himself going. His finishing is really letting him down. So then there's a lot of things that he needs to kind of push through right now. So.
Listen, I don't know if he's dealing with some kind of lingering injury, if this is just something young players go through, but they're certainly going to need Anthony Edwards at a certain point here. I mean, they've been kind of getting well against some of these better some of these worst teams in the league. A couple wins over Detroit, Sacramento. They've got another one here against Sacramento coming up. But once the schedule turns a little bit again and they're facing, some of these better teams and really trying to push for that, push for a top 6 seed, let's be honest. I mean, if they're in 7th right now, just a game behind Denver for 6th, trying to get into the playoffs, not just the play-in. And you've got the Lakers and the Clippers lurking below them. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of margin for error for turning this regular season from good into something even better than that. So they're certainly going to need Anthony Edwards going forward. There's no doubt about that. And hopefully, like Finch said, for their sake, they're able to get him going. One thing that's not been a problem at all lately is the play of their bench. Jordan McLaughlin, one of those key contributors who's taken advantage of some absences to work his way back into the rotation. He played 19 minutes last night, had 18. It was a plus 18, had 11 assists and 11 points, a double-double in just 19 minutes. He and Malik Beasley seem to have a good chemistry going. And that whole bench unit's just been on fire lately. Taurean Prince was a plus 18, Jaden McDaniels a plus 16. Making their shots, playing defense. So, McLaughlin actually was made available after the game. He is not usually one of the players that they bring out to media availability after the game. And here is Jordan McLaughlin after the game.
Yeah, I know Bees is running the floor and he's looking for the ball. So I'm just trying to push the pace. And once I see he has a little space, he only needs a little bit of time to get it off. So trying to penetrate into the paint and then, look for kickouts, and he's ready to shoot. Yeah, we're on a big roll. I mean, but it's not just our offense. It starts with our defense. When we're able to get stops, we're able to play in transition, and we're able to play fast. So we got guys running for layups, Malik and TP ready to shoot on the wing. So when we're able to get stops and play in transition, we're a really good team.
So it just seems like they're playing with a lot of confidence right now, which is always a good thing and an interesting thing to consider as we think about the trade deadline coming up tomorrow. It kind of feels like you don't want to mess up much with this team, right? Because if you're going to make a trade at the deadline, it's either a major, shake-up. You need something in your starting lineup, and I don't feel like they're necessarily at a point where I just don't know what they'd swap out in the starting lineup. And as far as the bench goes, they feel like they have a pretty good rhythm on the bench right now, and I don't know exactly what they would add to that. They haven't been linked to a whole lot of stuff lately, so this could be a moot point. But as we think about the trade deadline, I'm not sure if there's much to do. Not that they're like this complete great team, but I can't see much that they would do given salary cap constraints, given the way they're constructed, that would fundamentally improve them and make them better. So inclined to think they might just kind of stand still at the deadline and let some of the other teams around them make some of these defining moves that could eventually help them. I mean, Portland trading C.J. McCollum the other day certainly helps them, feel like they're going to stay clear of Portland for sure, although the Pelicans now acquiring McCollum and maybe eventually getting Zion Williamson back could be a factor, if not this year, in years to come. I mean, Sacramento made a big trade on Tuesday. That certainly impacted their depth on Tuesday night and their ability to compete. So, some of these moves are going to maybe impact them in different ways and not necessarily just them. But as far as the Wolves go, I'm not feeling like a trade machine right now. I'm feeling like they should maybe just kind of ride this out and see how this year goes and then maybe make some other moves in the off-season.
Take a playcation to Mystic Lake for 24/7 gaming, fun restaurants and bars, and luxurious hotel rooms. And join Club M to bask in the rewards. Follow the lights to Mystic Lake, where every day is play day.
Like I said at the beginning, I've got Rachel Blount, who checks in via voicemail from Beijing with all sorts of great Olympic updates. So let's listen to what Rachel has to say now.
Ni hao. This is Rachel Blount checking in from the Star Tribune's Beijing Olympics Bureau with a little update on how the games are going so far. We had our first Minnesota medal last night. Jessie Diggins wins bronze in the women's freestyle sprint. It was quite a night out at Zhangjiakou up in the mountains, 112 miles northwest of Beijing. Jessie's medal was historic for two reasons. It was the first individual Olympic medal won by a U.S. woman in cross-country skiing, And also Rosie Brennan, Jessie's U.S. teammate, was fourth, and that marked the first time that two U.S. women made an Olympic sprint final. The men did their job too. Best ever finish for the U.S. men. Ben Ogden was 12th. That was their best sprint finish. And all four of the U.S. men who competed in the men's sprint got out of qualifying. First time that's happened as well. So very good start after two events at these Olympics for the U.S. cross-country ski team. It was kind of a quiet atmosphere last night at the cross-country venue. There were a few hundred Chinese fans, but typically at the cross-country venue at the Olympics, it's absolutely crammed full of fans from all kinds of countries. They're clanging their cowbells, they're blowing on horns, they're all waving their flags. It's usually one of the craziest, most lively and fun venues at the Olympics. Last night we had some Chinese spectators who were thoroughly bundled up. It's very cold up there, and masked up, of course, and cheering in the way that we have become accustomed to at these games, waving little flags. They're generally quiet. That's what the authorities have asked, that people not cheer with their mouths to stop the spread of COVID, so people just wave these little flags. The sprint is considered one of Jessie's best events, probably her best chance to perhaps win a race and one of her best chances to medal. But no one last night was going to catch Jonna Sundling of Sweden. She absolutely dominated every round, which is really remarkable because the sprint is an absolutely furious, crazy race. 3 minutes of skiing as fast as you can, and 4 rounds of that for the people that reach the finals. You start in a qualifier, then you move on through quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. It's a race where in the heats you've got 6-person fields. You have to try to avoid collisions and falls and stumbles, which happen when people are jockeying for a position. And this is also a very, very tough course here in Zhangjiakou with a long early climb, and there's another uphill on this course as the athletes are approaching the stadium and going into that final straightaway. Sundling won every round by a wide margin. It was just an amazing performance. And in fact, Jessie gave a real hat tip to her in the press conference and spoke about how great it was to see people achieving their dreams. That was the first Olympic gold for Jonna Sundling, who is the world champion in the sprint. We still don't know how many races Jessie will do here at the Olympics. She would like to do all 6, but her coaches might choose to give her a rest day because of the extreme cold here. She likes cold weather, but when it's this cold, the coaches say that it causes skiers to expend more energy, and they need to monitor that and make sure she doesn't get too worn out. So they'll be looking after her, seeing how she recovers, and deciding her schedule moving forward based on that. She's pretty likely to race in the 10K Classic tomorrow. That race goes off at 3 p.m. Thursday, Beijing time. That's 1 a.m. Minnesota time. Not a race that's really in her wheelhouse, although she could do well in it. She is a very versatile skier who's worked really hard on her classic technique to bring it up to the level of her freestyle technique. She has competed in 3 10K Classics this year on the World Cup circuit. She was 13th, 16th, and 18th in those races. And if she does go at the Olympics, that'll be her first time racing in a 10K Classic at the Olympics. She competed in the 10K in 2018, but that was in the freestyle technique, and she was 5th in that race. Speaking of 5th place, is another amazing accomplishment by Jessie that I think gets overlooked a little bit, is she has been 7th or better in her last 8 Olympic races. All 6 races in 2018, she was 7th place or better. And this year, her 2 races, she was 6th in the women's skiathlon in Beijing on Saturday, and last night she got that bronze in the sprint. So it's a pretty remarkable record that Jessie has put together. The consistency is just really astonishing. Looking ahead to some other events coming up with our Minnesotans. Tonight I will be at men's curling, where our curling skip John Schuster will open defense of the 2018 gold medal that he and his team won. They'll be playing Russia. And tomorrow, my colleague Lavelle E. Neal III will be at women's curling, another group that has 3 Minnesota women there. And men's hockey, U.S. versus China, will also be starting tomorrow. I think Lavelle will be at that game as well. And we've got 9 Minnesotans on the U.S. team there. Well, thank you for listening. Enjoy the Olympics, and remember that you can follow all the action of the Minnesota athletes and everybody else competing in the games in the Star Tribune and at startribune.com.
A good reminder from Rachel to check out everything we're doing at Star Tribune, startribune.com. We have a curling guide that I enjoyed, kind of how to watch curling, how to know what's going on in that sport. One of the fun things to watch in the Olympics, I think, is curling. So I hope you guys will read that and get into the curling again this year. Happy to have Marcus Fuller back on Daily Delivery. Of course, covers Gophers men's basketball for the Star Tribune, college basketball in general. Marcus, how you doing?
Good to be talking Gophers again, although my team's not winning as much now, but I think they're still relevant. You know, the Big Ten's a tough league, and they continue to fight, and there's some close games here and there, and it seems like at some point here they're going to break through.
Kind of what we thought at the start of the year is starting to play itself out, right? Just the depth and how good the Big Ten is kind of starting to catch up to them, huh?
I think the Big Ten is tough, every year. Obviously last year they started off strong and they collapsed at the end of the season. I think this Big Ten is a little hard to figure out, especially in the beginning when teams like Purdue and Illinois struggled, and now they're back on top of the league. And I think more so than not, I feel like this league is judged by the bottom half and how they do. And I think the fact that the Gophers have not played any of these teams at the bottom half of the league yet, I think that's going to be how we're going to judge them when it's all said and done, is if they can beat some of these teams like Nebraska, Penn State, or Northwestern. So I think that's where right now, I think they're more of that caliber than the top of the Big Ten, obviously.
And one of those games, obviously, is Wednesday at Nebraska. Nebraska not having a good year at all. So, yeah, you're right. A chance for them to maybe, get a win and start to feel, not like they're feeling bad about themselves, but feel kind of try to start to recapture whatever kind of momentum they had at the start of the year when they were such a surprisingly good team.
Yeah, I think, it's all about expectations. Nobody in their right mind thought this was an NCAA tournament team, projected unanimously to finish last in the Big Ten. A lot of that was because they had so many newcomers, but, there's things that they're lacking now, or that's obviously lacking now that they lacked back then, which was, depth in the front court, overall depth. They suffered some injuries and they had some illnesses a few weeks ago, about a month ago, and that, kind of resulted in them dropping some games. I look back to the Michigan State game mid-January where they lost on a last-second basket by Joey Hauser, and what are the odds that Eric Curry goes down within the last minute of that game, and he was having the game of his life. If he would have finished that game, they might get that upset at Michigan State. He comes back from injury in his first game back from injury, and they lose to Wisconsin by 6. Again, not putting all on Curry's health, but if he's healthy to finish Michigan State and playing to the level he was prior to the injury at Wisconsin, they might pick up those 2 road wins, and then we're talking a different path right now than they are right with 7 losses in the last 8 games.
Yeah, and it goes to show too, though, the depth, especially in the front court, that you and I have talked about plenty of times. They just, we knew at the start of the year that they were going to be challenged in that way, and they certainly have been. Although, injuries and other things that happen towards the in the course of a season give other players an opportunity. They were playing a pretty tight 6-player rotation at the start of the year. What have we seen from any of these other players who they are going to lean on in future years, beyond just Jamison Battle?
Yeah, this team's built with seniors. Their rotation was 7 players and they're 6 seniors.
Yeah.
So, you take Curry out of the equation when he was hurt and he was a senior. That means someone who was not getting much playing time previously And at first, that was Trayton Thompson. He was a freshman from, played at Alexandria in outstate Minnesota. And I think because of his lack of physicality, he was unable to get into the rotation earlier. But his skill level, ability to shoot the ball was pretty obvious when he got more playing time. I believe he hit 4 threes within a 3 or 4 game span, and had 10 points versus Rutgers in the only win they've had recently. And so I think, his confidence and Ben Johnson's confidence in him has been a bright spot even during their losses. But again, now that Curry's healthy, the question is, how do you still play Trayton Thompson? How are you going to, able to get him and, some of their bench players to give them a spark? Because, this team cannot be carried by one player. Jamison Battle's been great this year, but, they're keying on him defensively, and Peyton Willis has been outstanding at times. But again, he can't be asked to carry the team on his own.
You talked about the schedule, and I want to get back to that in a minute. Ben Johnson, obviously, they got a ton of really positive press at the start of the season. People lauding the job he was doing, and I think he's still doing the same job. But as the losses have mounted, how do you think he's handling and adjusting to that in his first year as head coach?
Well, I've talked about it in the past, and it's pretty clear now that no other Gopher coach has taken over a team this depleted.
Yeah.
I think so. We have to judge his first year in a nutshell. Like, okay, 10 newcomers, one person back from last year's team that had Big Ten experience. This is something that's no coach has been asked to do in the history of Gopher basketball. And, whether they win another game in the Big Ten or not, we have to put that in perspective. How he's handled this team, I think he's putting them generally in the best position to be successful, to be competitive. They've done some things defensively to make up for their lack of size inside and rebounding. They've tried to get players like Jamison Battle going, and he's really emerged as one of the best young players in the Big Ten. And then moving forward, he's going to be a big part of their team. So I think that this coaching staff has worked wonders with the talent that they have. I think they've done a good job of developing, or they will still continue to do a good job of developing Jamison Battle and some of the younger players. And so I think that moving forward is something we'll have to take a look at. When they get more talent, when they get more depth, how do they continue to make adjustments? How do they continue to develop those younger players? And I think next year's team will have a good opportunity to make a step forward.
Getting to that schedule, too, we mentioned they play Nebraska on Wednesday night, 4 of the next 5 against either Nebraska, Penn State, or Northwestern, those kind of teams in the conference that seem to be more on their peer level. And, the tough ones against Wisconsin, Indiana, Maryland won't be a picnic, but Northwestern to finish the year as well. So, some chances to pick up some wins down the stretch here. Do you have as we kind of wrap up talking about this team in particular, how would you like to see them close the season, whether it's a win total or just what do you want to see from them as they kind of, finish off the second half of this year?
Well, since I'm paying Ben Johnson's salary, then it's all it's all on me, what I expect. But if I were Mark Coyle, the athletic director, I would say that I would like to see them continue to be competitive in these games. Iowa got away from them, not like I've seen in many games this year. I think Illinois and Iowa were the only 2 games where I felt like, or Iowa second half, were the only 2 games I felt like they were really, really overmatched. Purdue is top 4 team in the country. I still feel like in the second half they were right there with Purdue until the very end. The Iowa second half and Illinois games, I just thought, wow, this is not doesn't look like a Big Ten caliber team. And even though they are, depleted with depth and those things. I think Coyle would probably want to see them continue to be competitive, especially against the top half of the Big Ten, or especially against the bottom half of the Big Ten. You need to see them possibly get a win or two against a Northwestern, Nebraska or Penn State at home. And then again, on the road, you still want to see them be competitive. And then, at the end of the year, the last couple games at home and then in the Big Ten tournament, Jamison Battle, some of these guys that'll be back next year, hopefully they're playing better, their best basketball, and they show fans and they show the administration, what's to look forward to in the future.
Nebraska, by the way, 0-12 in the Big Ten, 6-17 overall. They've lost 10 in a row, but a lot of these teams probably, too, look at Minnesota the same way Minnesota looks at them and says, hey, we have an opportunity to get a win. So no sure thing, obviously, there. Marcus, final thought from you. Anything coming up in your excellent basketball across Minnesota feature that has been running, since the start of the year?
Well, I appreciate you giving me a shout out for BAM. Basketball across Minnesota has been really fun and refreshing. I enjoy covering the Gophers and Ben Johnson's first year, but it's nice to step away sometimes and cover basketball in the state of Minnesota. I think is on a level of anywhere in the country, and the high school level certainly has been producing a lot of talent, and I look forward to writing here soon about some of the big men that have come out of the state of Minnesota. We're seeing some of them at the NBA level and also at the college level, and we're gonna see a future Gopher and a future big man, high level recruit in the junior class coming up here. So I'm looking forward to writing about those guys.
Sounds good. I will be reading. Hope everyone else is too. Marcus, you do a great job covering college basketball for the Star Tribune. We'll catch up with you again soon, and maybe we'll even have a win or two to talk about.
All right. I can't guarantee that, but I look forward to talking with you guys again.
Sounds good, Marcus. Take care.
See you.
Always good to catch up with Marcus. Does a great job covering the Gophers for the Star Tribune. Looking forward to that Nebraska game tonight. Like to see the Gophers get back on the winning track because I feel like they – it's a team that's, we don't root in the media, but, underdog stories are always easy for fans to root for. It'd be nice to see them stack up a few more wins before the year is done and then get some momentum going into that off season. Let's finish with the Cooler. The Wild played Tuesday night. We didn't get to that until the end because there wasn't a whole lot to say about it. Lost 2-0 to Winnipeg. First game coming out of the All-Star break. Sometimes there's a legs issue. Sometimes you don't have quite the jump. I don't think they played all that poorly in the game, but they did see their winning streak come to an end. Kaapo Kähkönen played pretty well in net, but, 1 of 82, maybe flush that one away. Still have a lot of confidence in this team to do good things going forward. So, I guess the message I have from this one is not every game's going to be a masterpiece, and sometimes you just got to kind of move on from a result, maybe an expected one in a first game out of the break on the road, and we'll see, if they can kind of recapture that flow they had going into the break. That will do it for today's show. Should have some good stuff coming up on Thursday. Expecting to talk to Rachel Blount of the Lynx, just re-upped with the Lynx. Going to chat with her later on Wednesday and play that for you on Thursday's show. Should have a bunch of other stuff as well for you. Have a great rest of your day. Back at it on Thursday.